When women come to me and tell me that they are happily married, I genuinely hope that they are. But mentally, I put an asterisk by the word happy. And I'm going to share with you guys why. And these are stories that I have heard over the last many years of my life from women who told me that they were happily married. I once heard a woman tell me a story about how when she met her husband, on their first date, they really didn't click, so she just kind of moved on. He found her at the mall and they reconnected, and they've been together for 20 something years. As I got to know this woman, her husband also did not have a job, and they hadn't been physically intimate in decades. He also complained about her to his family, to the point where his family was begging for him to come back home. He was basically spending her money. She was hemorrhaging money because he was buying fitness equipment and video games and speakers and shit for his car. And she always tried to make it seem as if she never liked public displays of affection, but she would describe to me a situation where it just basically seemed like he did not want to be seen with her in public. Another woman I once knew told me that she was happily married and she was so happy that she finally met the one. Several months later, she wound up admitting to some people that she was frustrated because it seemed as if her husband didn't want to spend time with her anymore, and he would basically come home, and from the time he walked in the door, he would spend the rest of the day locked away in their room. Another woman I once knew told me that she was happily married. Her and her man had been together for I don't remember how many years. She described to me past relationships that she had been through that were abusive and extremely toxic. So I'm happy for her that she finally met a man who treated her the way she deserved to be treated. As I got to know her, he is extremely jealous and controlling, and at one point she wanted to be an influencer and had a substantial following, and he made her delete all her social media accounts for fear that she might meet someone else. I met many women over the years who bragged about how happily married they were and would say that marriage is hard work. However, upon further investigation, the hard work that they were referring to was forgiving a man who cheated on them either once or several times. I've met women who have told me how happily married they were, and when I saw them interact with their partners at work events, or we had outings or hung out together, they had an outing at their house or whatever, it seemed as if they were physically in pain being around each other, or they just never acknowledged each other. They never talked. They never did anything together. They were just two ships passing in the night, existing together. How romantic. I once had a teacher, I'll never forget this, and we were doing a play or something, and she would brag about how her and her husband were married for almost 50 years, and he had come to help us put together something. I don't remember what it was. And the way he talked to her, I wish I had the courage at that time. I was only a child. But I wish I could have kicked him in his shins, kneecaps, nuts, back, and face, because you do not talk to somebody the way he talked to her. A woman told me how happily married she was and how she bragged all the time about her husband told her how she didn't have to work. But as I got to know her, I understand why she did, because that man would control every aspect of her life and she would never see freedom again. I've heard women not just brag about being happily married, but brag about what amazing fathers that their husbands were, and their husbands didn't do anything. Their husbands pretended to be stupid, and the wives had to do the brunt of everything, and they were frustrated because of that type of situation. And they could never leave their kids alone with their husbands or have free time. And if they ever wanted to do something, they had to take their kids with them. I've heard women who aren't even married brag about how wonderful their relationships were. And then as I got to know them, it was a situation where they had been together for multiple years and they were begging that man to finally propose to them. How romantic! So I'm a bit jaded because of some I haven't even mentioned. All of these stories that I've heard over my lifetime of women saying how happily married they were. When I actually got to know them and they began to talk more about their relationships and their marriages, and what a lot of these women, and me even at one point, are describing, happily married just simply means married. That's it. There ain't no happiness or joy about what they are living on a daily basis. What a lot of women have described to me as hard work is putting up with cheating and abuse and control. And what a lot of women have told me is compromise in relationships was basically them giving up everything that they've wanted, giving up their identities, and completely surrendering to whatever that man wanted to do, and no longer wanting to argue about it because they didn't want to piss him off, so they simply just gave up. And this is why I tell people, don't envy someone just because they're posting pictures of them and their husband looking lovingly at each other. Don't envy people because of happy videos that you see. Because I've talked to women in women's shelters, because I've been to one and I've visited them afterwards. I've gotten emails and comments from, I've heard the stories. I've worked with women I've been talking about this stuff since 2009. And again, and I stick by this, what a lot of women describe as happily married is actually simply the fact that they are married and they stayed for a really long time, because we tend to reward people who have been in relationships for a certain amount of years, and we look down and we say shit like everybody's just giving up, but we fail to talk about why people are giving up and not staying together the way older couples used to back in the day. So based on what I've heard over the years, when somebody tells me how happily married they are and how many years they've been together, don't get it twisted. I genuinely hope and believe in my heart, maybe I'm being delusional, that they're telling the truth until they tell me otherwise. And unfortunately, statistically, and from what I've heard, it don't be true most of the time. Now, there are some people who are happy. I ain't no hater. Don't get it wrong. But it's very rare that somebody who says that they're happily married actually is. Don't be out here envying folks, y'all. Y'all don't have no idea what really goes on.